They said it was under control. They said no one was in danger. They said Chernobyl was just a fire. But the flames were hiding something much darker. Because the truth wasn't smoke. The truth was radiation. And even though no one could see it, it was already. This is the story of the biggest lie in modern history. A lie so deep it poisoned the land, the water, the animals, and the people. A lie that lasted long enough to turn loyal workers into walking ghosts. A lie that twisted the fate of thousands and left bodies that didn't just die, they glowed. The first lie was silence. On April 26, 1986, at 1:23 a.m., the world's worst nuclear disaster unfolded not in a matter of days, but in a matter of seconds. A reactor at the V.I. Lenin nuclear power plant exploded. A blast so forceful it blew apart 1,000 tons of steel and concrete. But the real explosion was happening at a different level, an explosion of lies. Because, while the reactor was torn apart, the truth was being stitched together. Within hours, the radiation levels around the plant were higher than anything ever recorded. Clouds of radioactive isotopes floated into the air like invisible ash, moving with the wind, drifting into cities, falling on gardens, playgrounds, windowsills, rooftops, and eventually into lungs. But the Soviet government said nothing, not a single word. People kept going to work, kids went out to play, weddings continued. Life moved forward, not knowing that death was already present. The air was poison, and no one was told. The firefighters, the soldiers, the engineers, no one was warned. And when the first victims began collapsing on the ground, no one asked why. Because everyone was told, everything is fine. But everything was not fine. The Soviet Union wasn't just hiding the truth, they were rewriting it. Every cough, every fever, every blister was dismissed as ordinary, a minor industrial accident, a containable event, a localized fire. But as the lies grew, so did the death toll. One of the first signs emerged in the hospital beds of Pripyat, where the firefighters who fought the initial blaze were taken. These were men in their prime, brave, strong, trained for danger. But they weren't trained for this. Their skin turned red and blistered. Their hair fell out in chunks. Their stomachs twisted inside out. Their eyes, once fierce, now stared into a void. Doctors didn't know what to do. They didn't have the right medicine. They weren't even allowed to say what was happening. Radiation poisoning wasn't in their textbooks. It wasn't in their training. It wasn't even in their language. They didn't call it radiation. They called it burns. Just burns. But these weren't burns. These men weren't just dying. They were changing. Their bodies turned purple. Their organs liquefied. Their blood stopped clotting. Their veins blackened. Their fingernails fell off, and skin began to slough from their bones. They reeked of metal. Their sweat smelled of chemicals. Their breath tasted like ash. Their bodies felt like fire and ice at the same time, and as their families leaned in to kiss them, radiation passed from one body into another. What was once human love was now a death sentence, but the Soviet Union kept lying. While the firefighters were dying in Moscow hospitals, Soviet officials were denying everything. The people of Pripyat were never warned. The streets weren't evacuated until 36 hours later, and by then, the glow had already begun. Not the green glow of cartoons, not the sci-fi radiation glow people imagine. This was something worse. People's skin began to shine, not with light, but with sickness. They called it the metallic sheen. Doctors noticed it first, a strange silver tone spreading across the faces and arms of the exposed, a signal the body was no longer alive, but dying in slow motion. Some described it as looking like death warmed over. Others said it resembled a coat of frost. But no matter the metaphor, every version meant the same. The body was shutting down, cell by cell, in silence. The second lie was the cover-up. Radiation spread across Ukraine, Belarus, Sweden, and beyond. Radiation detectors in Europe screamed. Scientists across the world raised alarms. But inside the Soviet Union, they threw up roadblocks. They erased documents. They ordered silence. A wedding in Pripyat happened just hours after the explosion. Children played outside while the air pulsed with radiation thicker than fog. People hung clothes out to dry, clothes that would become contaminated forever. When the evacuation came, it was already too late, and they told people to pack for 3 days. 3 days. People brought pets, potted plants, toys, and birthday cakes, but they would never return. The buses rolled out, the soldiers put up fences, the city was locked, and a place that once held 50,000 souls became a ghost. One man dared to speak. Valery Legasov, the chief investigator of the Chernobyl disaster. He tried to tell the world the truth, that this wasn't an accident, it was negligence, that the reactor design was flawed, that the workers were pressured, that the state lied. But the truth wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. Legasov was told to change his report. He was threatened. He was followed. He was silenced. And 2 years later, on the second anniversary of the disaster, Valery Legasov took his own life. But before he died, he recorded tapes. Secret tapes. Tapes that exposed the truth of Chernobyl and the lies the world wasn't supposed to hear. The third lie was statistics. They said only 31 people died. 31. That's the official number. But it's a lie that insults reality. Because what about the babies born without bones, the children who never learned to speak, the farmers who found their cows glowing in the dark, the mothers who carried death inside their wombs? Radiation doesn't stop at borders. It doesn't ask permission. It moves through soil, water, air, and DNA. By the late 90s, thyroid cancer in Belarusian children had skyrocketed. New cancers appeared that doctors had no names for. Men in their 40s had the joints of 90-year-olds. Women in their 20s had the wombs of the dead. There were villages where no child lived past the age of 10. Families who couldn't hold funerals because the bodies were too toxic to bury. Doctors who refused to deliver babies because their hands would glow after holding them. And the worst part? It took years for the truth to leak, decades for the lies to break, and generations to count the real cost. Because Chernobyl didn't just kill bodies, it killed trust. Families were torn apart, land was abandoned, cities were frozen in time, and people stopped believing what they were told. Because the government didn't just fail to protect them, they lied. They lied about the danger. They lied about the heroes. They lied about the dead. They even lied about the land. They said the soil was safe. They said the food was safe. They said the animals were fine. But in the red forest, the trees turned a sickening shade of copper. Birds stopped singing. Wolves were born with extra legs. Antlers grew in spirals, and fish glowed in the rivers like headlights in the dark. Those who returned spoke of silence, a silence so deep it felt alive. Homes were frozen mid-sentence, dishes on tables, toys on floors, calendars stuck on April 1986. Those who went back to visit their homes in the exclusion zone noticed something strange. The animals behaved differently, as if they sensed the world had changed, as if they knew the land remembered, because radiation doesn't just destroy life, it rewrites it. And the people who lived through Chernobyl, they carry that history in their bones. Some became liquidators, sent to clean up the mess with shovels and bare hands. Others became shadows, wandering abandoned villages where dust-covered pianos that would never be played again. Those who tried to rebuild found themselves haunted by sickness, by death, and by memories of a sky no one could touch without being burned by something they couldn't see. And still, the lies spread. Years later, some claimed it was all exaggerated, that the danger was blown out of proportion, that the glow wasn't real. But tell that to the children buried in unmarked graves. Tell that to the mothers who had to bury their sons. Tell that to the firemen whose suits still melt, Geiger counters. Tell that to the bones of the men who pulled uranium rods with their bare hands. They don't need to speak. Their silence tells the truth. Because Chernobyl didn't just glow, it burned. It burned through bodies. It burned through history. It burned through lies. And in that fire, the truth was revealed. The Soviet Union tried to bury the story beneath concrete, steel, and propaganda. But the world learned something from Chernobyl. Lies don't stop radiation. Denial doesn't stop fallout. Silence doesn't stop death. And when the bodies start to glow, it's already too late. Chernobyl isn't just a warning. It's a mirror, a reminder that truth isn't always visible, but its consequences always are.